5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Start. Honorable members of the bench, the matter that now lies before this respected forum concerns the nuanced interpretation and practical enforcement of contractual obligations, as they are recognized and governed under the prevailing tenets of common law jurisprudence. The present case arises from a dispute wherein the party bringing the appeal contends that the opposing party has demonstrably failed to act in accordance with the mutually agreed terms and provisions set forth in a legally binding document executed by both sides. It is the appellant's submission that the respondent, through a series of actions and omissions, has failed to fulfill the contractual responsibilities incumbent upon them, and in doing so, has occasioned a breach of contract. The appellant argues that this failure, being material and substantive in nature, constitutes a clear violation of the agreement and thereby grants them the right to seek legal redress and compensation in a manner that is just, equitable, and proportionate to the harm suffered. The respondent, however, has taken a different position entirely. In their rebuttal, they firmly maintain that no such breach has occurred, and they argue that all steps undertaken by them were fully consistent with the terms previously settled and agreed upon. According to their version, all acts were performed within the framework of the contract, and thus, the allegations made against them are without factual or legal basis. They request that the petition be dismissed at the threshold on the ground that it discloses no cause of action and lacks substantive merit. To arrive at a just and fair conclusion, this court is now tasked with a meticulous examination of the specific language used within the contract. Each clause must be interpreted not only on its literal terms, but also in accordance with the broader principles that govern contractual relations in law. These principles require the court to determine the true intention of the parties at the time of execution and to give effect to that intention wherever possible, provided it does not conflict with public policy or established legal norms. In the course of this inquiry, it may become necessary to consider the doctrine of frustration, which becomes applicable in situations where unforeseen events have occurred after the formation of the contract, thereby making the performance of contractual duties either impossible or fundamentally different from what the parties originally envisaged. If the conditions to invoke this doctrine are satisfied, the party affected may be discharged from their obligations under the agreement. However, it is well established that the onus of proving such frustration lies heavily on the party seeking to rely upon it. Equally relevant to the present matter may be the doctrine of estoppel. This principle seeks to prevent injustice that may arise when one party has, by their words or conduct, led the other to believe in the existence of a certain legal or factual position and induced them to act accordingly. In such a case, it would be inequitable to allow the first party to subsequently assert a contrary position, especially when doing so would result in prejudice or harm to the other. A pivotal component of this dispute concerns the assessment and awarding of damages. Should the breach be established, the party that has suffered loss or injury is, in principle, entitled to receive monetary compensation commensurate with the extent of the harm endured. The law differentiates between direct or general damages, which arise naturally from the breach, and special or consequential damages, which are unique to the circumstances of the particular case. However, compensation may not be awarded for losses deemed too remote or speculative in nature. In this instance, the appellant has placed on record a claim for both compensatory and consequential damages, stating that the breach has not only led to immediate financial loss but has also caused further indirect harm, including disruption of business relationships and reputational damage. The respondent contests the quantum and nature of these claims, suggesting that the losses have either been exaggerated or lack sufficient documentary support. In addition to monetary damages, the court may consider granting equitable relief in the form of specific performance. This remedy, which is discretionary in nature, compels the defaulting party to fulfill their contractual obligations rather than merely paying damages. Such a remedy is particularly appropriate in cases where monetary compensation is inadequate to place the aggrieved party in the position they would have been in had the contract been properly performed. Nonetheless, courts are generally cautious in granting this remedy and assess whether its enforcement would be feasible, fair, and just in the circumstances. Factors that influence the court's decision to grant specific performance include the uniqueness of the subject matter of the contract, the clarity of its terms, the conduct of the party seeking the remedy, and whether enforcement would necessitate continuous court supervision, which is generally discouraged. For example, where the subject matter relates to personal skill, service, or ongoing obligations, the courts may find it impractical or inequitable to issue such orders. Another concept worth noting is the principle of waiver. If a party, through conduct or express declaration, chooses not to enforce a specific contractual right, they may be deemed to have waived that right. Such waiver may occur inadvertently or deliberately, but once established, it may prevent the party from later asserting the same right to the detriment of the other. Closely related to the above is the duty to mitigate losses. A party that suffers a breach has a corresponding obligation to act reasonably in order to reduce or limit the extent of the loss. In summation, the resolution of this legal controversy hinges upon a careful and reasoned application of contractual doctrines, the facts as presented by both parties, and the principles of justice and equity. The court is required to evaluate whether a legally actionable breach has occurred, whether the remedies sought are appropriate to the circumstances, and whether the conduct of each party aligns with the obligations imposed upon them by law. Stop.